Okay, I'm here with Lainey, the con law dog. She wants to know some con law. She wants to learn some con law today, so she's going to stick here with us, it looks like. I want to talk to you today, before we get to the political question doctrine substantively. It occurred to me that students need to be aware when a certain question is asked on an exam that there are multiple different issues that question could implicate. Be very wary with a con law question of the call of the question. If the call of the question is whether Congress has the authority to do something, right, is Congress's law constitutional, well then you're being tested on Congress's enumerated powers. If the call of the question is whether a presidential executive order is valid, then you're being tested on Youngstown and presidential authority. In Con Law 1 in particular, if you're asked whether a state law is valid, that right there tells you that you might be being tested and probably are being tested on dormant commerce. In Con Law 2, there's a slew of different issues that are involved, but in Con Law 1, you want to really get down to, okay, if the call of the question is X, where the issue is Y. Now let me talk about a completely different question than those questions about congressional power, presidential power, and the power of the state. Watch for a call of the question that asks this. Should a court hear or entertain, right, this case? Another way of asking that question is, should a federal court dismiss this claim? When the call of the question is, should a court hear this case, should a court entertain this case, right, you can hear that language, or should a court dismiss this case, you're probably being asked, and again, I don't want to make promises, but when that's the call of the question, one of the things you have to think about is that you may be being tested on the concept of justiciability, right? A case is either justiciable or it is non-justiciable. Justiciable, capable of being resolved by a court. A case that should be in a court, a federal court, is a justiciable case. A case that should not be in a federal court is a non-justiciable case. I want to run through, when you see that call of the question, right, should a court entertain this case or should a court dismiss this case? Again, two sides of the same coin. I want you to run through a mental checklist of 5 possible issues that you're being tested there that fall under the umbrella of justiciability, or right, a justiciable or non-justiciable case. Number 1, speaking of the political question doctrine, a case is non-justiciable if it presents a political question. Now I'm going to have a whole different video about how you know you're being tested on political question doctrine. But if the call of the question is, should a court hear this case or should a court dismiss, one of the possible justiciability issues would be whether the case presents a political question, i.e. one that should not be in a court. So you have to check that off. Check for that, right? Do I see facts in here about political questions generally? The second justiciability issue that you want to look for, again, if you see that call of the question, should a court hear this case, is whoever is raising the claim, does that party have standing? And again, standing has a lot to it, and I'll do a separate video on when you know you're being tested on standing. But again, even if the call of the question is, should a court hear this case, you want to look at political question doctrine, possibly, and standing possibly being a problem. Now, related to standing, mootness. Moot means there's nothing we can do about it anymore, which is related to standing, because what that really means is it's not redressable anymore. There's nothing a court can do about it. A case that is moot is non-justiciable. Similarly, a case that is not ripe is non-justiciable, right? The case has to be ripe. That's also related to standing, because standing requires injury in fact that's not speculative or conjectural, and to say that a case is not ripe is to say that we don't have a concrete injury, at least not yet, right? All we have is possibly conjecture or speculation. But that too falls under the umbrella of justiciability. So again, if the call of the question is, should a court hear this case or should a court dismiss this case, right? Political question doctrine, standing, mootness, and ripeness are possible justiciability issues. Finally, you want to take a look at the 11th Amendment as a possibility, because the 11th Amendment is a bar that's right in the text of the Constitution that stops federal courts from entertaining certain types of lawsuits against states. And again, there's more meat that needs to be put on those bones, but here I'm just talking about issue spotting. So I'm going to repeat, if the call of the question is, should a court hear this case, or the flip side, should a court dismiss this case, then you're not being tested substantively on Congress's power, the president's power or a state's power. There you're being tested on a court's power, right? And the appropriateness of a court exercising its power. Again, those issues are called justiciability issues, and when you see that call to question, go through your mental checklist. Do I have a political question here? Do I have a standing problem here? Do I have a mootness problem here? Is this case ripe? Is there something in the fact pattern that would cause me to be concerned about the 11th Amendment, right, with a person suing a state by name in federal court? More on that later, but get that checklist down. When you see that call to question, and common law 1 in particular, you want to make sure you're thinking about all of those possibilities. So we'll go ahead and start going through those one at a time, starting with political question doctrine. I hope you'll come back, click subscribe to make sure that you get notified whenever there's a new video put up, and we'll see you the next time.